Okay, so let's get started. So I want to look at so this is a first live stream, by the way, that I'm starting with this. I'm trying out to do a live class, meaning that I want to where this is all coming from. So I've created this package SPUC, right? It has some game templates. If you guys tried it out, you might have seen it. And also, if someone don't have access to it, I'm going to be giving away one of the key for the package. So if you stick around, I'll actually tell the instructions for that. So that I'll be doing, and right here I have some scripts that that I used for this package to make it a little bit more easier to use Visual Scripting. And then most of them are actually the super units, which are graphs. They're going to be actually changed to subgraphs, as far as I know, in the next release of Visual Scripting. So there's going to be some more changes that are coming up. And the reason why I went with using actually supergraphs instead of actually writing scripts and then writing custom units is that so that any one of you that actually tried out Visual Scripting can go and modify any of them, or even learn from how they're made. So if you want to see how the move unit works, you can double click on it, go inside, and look at all of the chaos here. Now that move unit is more complex than you would actually make, but because I'm trying to have the move unit to actually work with the 3D rigid body, 2D rigid body, and then also just a transition. I could have even added another one if you use a character controller to actually add that ability as well. And if anyone is actually interested in that, I can actually make that happen for that. So even for that, like if you want to see how you can move your object, you can go in this super unit, and based on what you're doing, so if you're using a 3D rigid body, you can look at this, and this will tell you how to move. So basically this part right here is how you move a 3D rigid body object, and I'm just doing it on update. And then if you're using transform, probably should label this, but if you're just using a transform, you just move it like that, and 2D object right there. So that was the idea, is to have these units, and you can look how to pause the game inside here. So pausing in Unity is just one of the options actually for pausing is setting the time scale to 0, so that everything that is using the scale time is actually slowed down to basically not moving at all. So that is one of the possibility, one of the benefits of actually looking at this. Then things like touch, you can check out how it's made here. Of course, you will probably see that there's a common actually pattern that is throughout this, is this toggle flow, and it is for controlling the enable and disable of those units. So each unit that has enable disable actually has a state inside of it, and based on the input that you used, you can enable disable by triggering those flows. Okay, so that's just a brief overview of how this SPUC thing is structured, and in what you can use it for. But let's take a look at how it's used for a game. So here I have a player, and for this player I have a script machine, which is a Visual Scripting, and you can create so that that logic that you saw for this cube, you can actually go and look at the script machine here, and we have a move unit, means that the cube is moving 5 into the one direction. I have also touch move, but I'm not actually moving. I was testing it, so I can remove that. Then I have camera follow, which is why the camera is actually following the player, because the camera follow does that logic for you. And right here you can see if collide, anytime I collide with anything, I spawn the debris explosion, so it's just in effect. And also have a level, so you haven't seen the level part in the demo that I was just playing, because it was already at the level 2, which was an infinite level. But there's also a level here, and then score is basically using the position and getting the x-axis, flooring it to int, because the scores are actually in int, and just use set score. This is a new unit. If you've used it before, yeah, I have pushed an update to the SPUC. I think it's like 6 hours ago, or something like that. So there's the current version is 1.03. 1.03, yeah, that's the current version. And the biggest thing was I redid the scoring system. Well, improved it. I'm trying to make sure that all the changes that I do are actually backwards compatible. So if you used any units before, like I had the add coin and add point before I did the score system, so those units are still working exactly like they did before. And if you go inside here, you can see that inside it actually uses the add score unit, which provides the functionality that basically same functionality that you had before. And if you actually want to create your own, like a more advanced score, then you can use the add score. In fact, let me try to, well, yeah, so you can use the add score, and that was what I was using here. Actually, no, I was using set score, but you can do add score. Oh, let me pull that up. Add score, and the options you have, you can add to the current, to total, to current, or to current and total. If you're adding to current, it also calculates the best score. So if you have, if you want to know what's your best score for that specific level, it will be doing that for you. And you can always get score. I'll be looking through, and you can get score. So that's just the changes that I did. So in here you can get total, current, and best. And also if you want to have more than 2 options for score, because the default is points or coins, you can also use custom, and you can write what your custom name here, and it can have multiple custom scores. Okay, so that's how it works. That's how it looks, and that's how you use it. Now, where you can find all of the units that actually are with that comes with SPUC is right here. So I use this 0 all SPUC units. Just the 0 is put the 0 there, so it'd be the first thing in the list. So that's why the 0 is there. So you can go to the SB units, and the first thing should be that. And in here you can find current list of all of the units. Okay, I'll stop, pause with the presentation and look at the chat right now and see if you guys have any questions. Okay, so is Unreal in Unity since that day better? How are your day? I tried it better. Okay, looks like you guys are communicating here. I would get SPUC, but I don't have the extra money. Yeah, so I'm planning to do a giveaway of a key. That's gonna be a first time I'm gonna be trying this out. So and I'll be given instructions of how to actually apply for the giveaway, or how you can get your name for the giveaway. Is Bolt and Unreal Graph are different? And Unreal Graphs. Yes, so Bolt and Unreal Graphs are different. They're for different engines, and yeah. Yes, but the difference aren't small. Other videos, that's good. I have questions. I came to Unity from Unreal, so I know. Okay, so you know. Okay. Hello. My Visual coding doesn't work. It just comes up with an error. So yeah, if you have any problems or anything of that sort, you can always try to post your question on the official Bolt server. So let me see if I can find. I'll try to pull up. Okay, Visual Scripting right there. So you can post questions on the Discord server, the official Bolt server, or you can, if you actually want someone from our community, or if you want me, sometimes other people help out, but lately it was mostly me looking at the problems. So if you have any questions, you can, especially if you have questions regarding SPUC, then yeah, be sure to actually use my server for that, and you can ask the questions there. I'm just trying to get a link. So you can ask the question. The links are in description of all the videos to the Discord server, so you can find it, but here is one in the chat. So the second one is my server, and the first one is the Bolt server. And so why is it better to actually use Discord than YouTube for questions? Is because you can actually screenshot your graph and show what exactly you're trying to do. That way you can even post videos, and if there's something that happens in runtime. Okay, so for questions regarding like specific things, yeah, use the Discord server for that, because it's hard to explain what's going on when you use visual graphs. So you need some visual aids, like photos to actually, pictures or screenshots of the graphs to actually see. The camera follow and the spawn and load next is in SPUC. Yes, so the units. I'll be going right after I catch up with the chat. I'll be going through the SPUC units, just skim through to show you guys what's actually here right now, and what's the idea of how these things are broken up and stuff like that. So we'll get to that, but those units that you specified, the blue box, are in there. Okay, so what are super units? Super units are basically subgraphs. Well, they're going to be actually renamed to subgraphs, but super unit is, so I can, in here, so right here I have a graph, and in this graph I can have like these super units, what they're called. And what this super unit is it has a graph inside it. So if I double click on this one, you can see that I went from 0 all SP unit to touch unit. So now I'm currently looking at that touch super unit, and this super unit has functionality inside there. So one more thing that you can is different is that you have input and output in the super unit, because the inputs and outputs that I use here are the ones that are available here. So this side is the inputs. That's what you can find them right there, and the other side is the outputs, and you can find those outputs. So there's value, there's flow inputs and there's value inputs. So that's what it is. Okay. So can you make a tutorial for how to make an enemy with guns in Unity C#? So C# courses, my channel was from the beginning was focused more on actually visuals, visual coding or no code or whatever you want to call it. So, and I did try out to do like coding, C# coding tutorials and stuff like that, but since my most of the followers actually here because of visual scripting or no code solutions, then I kind of think that I'm going to be missing my audience for that. Although I do still want to make C# courses, but it's not the main priority of the channel right now. I'm still focusing on visual scripting and providing that. So for C# tutorials, you be better off, I guess, looking for another tutorial that already exists, because there's tons of C# tutorials, and you can find that enemies with guns C# tutorial, pretty sure. So if I haven't been doing that much research into C# tutorials and what's out there, but because I'm mainly focusing on visual scripting, and there's not that much. By the way, one more thing that I probably should mention, you guys. So visual scripting is fairly new. The name is fairly new, but it was known as Bolt before. So any tutorials that you can find on Bolt, they will work in visual scripting as well. There are some naming differences. So so be sure to, like, if you can't find a tutorial in visual scripting, try searching with Bolt, because there's Bolt was out for longer than visual scripting, because visual scripting term was introduced. Well, the conversion of Bolt to visual scripting was just this. I think this year, with the release at 2021 version 2021.1 version of Unity, that's when visual scripting actually became a thing for actually development. Before then, you would have to use Bolt, and you still have to use Bolt if you're using older version than 2021. But so be sure to look for Bolt tutorials if you're looking for some kind of tutorial and you can't find it for visual scripting. Although I do try to have both names there, so I try to go through all my tutorials and include visual scripting as a keyword as well, so you can easily find it if you're looking for that. Okay, can you make your own super units? Yes, so super units are pretty simple. So you can do add unit, and a super unit is actually one of the units that is available here. So click super unit. That's how it looks at the beginning. You can go double click, go inside here, and you start with an empty input and empty output. And right here on the side, you can add your triggers, and you can add the data inputs. So triggers are basically the flows, flow inputs and outputs, and data is the data outputs. So that's how super units starts. There's also, if you're not searching for it, you can look for nesting. It might actually change the naming. Like I said, in the next version, I think it's going to be subgraphs. That's what they're going for. There's also state units, and this is I don't think, yeah. So this is just basically start and stop. You can, if you're trying to do something that allows doing like enable and disable, but I don't you don't have an option for providing more inputs here and outputs. So, and it's using a state machine here. So if you need a state machine within your script machine, then you can use the state unit, and then you can start and stop. But for state machines, you probably would want to use a state machine instead of the state unit. Although you can find a use and some techniques of using both. Okay, any more? Okay, can you? Okay, brother, I am your fan, and students also love you. Okay, great. Does visual scripting slow down the performance of the game compared to C#? So visual scripting is going to be slower than C#. There is no doubt about that. Currently, well, I don't know. So Unity was trying to create their own visual scripting, and then they, like in midway, they decided to actually adopt an existing one. So the one that they were creating was actually pretty fast, and it was, I think, as far as I know, was as fast as C# in terms of performance. But they decided to adopt something that already exists and something that has more bigger community, and that is simpler to use because. I guess that's makes more sense business-wise. And with the purchase of Bolt was, I think it's a little bit over a year since they purchased Bolt, I think, as far as I know. And when they purchased Bolt, they're working on it and improving it. So I will expect to see performance improvement, and that's probably their main focus is going to be performance improvements. But you'll still see some slower performance than C#. Where will that be an effect is not in every game that you're actually going to see that. If you ever start generating some things, so if you want to generate maps or generate your own terrains with scripting, visual scripting is going to be that's where you're actually going to see this performance slowdown, because it's, as far as I know, it's not as good at operating with arrays and lists. It's the efficiency actually goes down there. On the things that you see here, like all the units that I'm using here, you won't see that much of a performance hit. So one thing that I can tell is, so you'll start seeing performance issues if you use a lot of animation units. So, but how big of a performance problem is it? So this operation, for instance, position animation, if you try to use the super unit for position animation, the performance difference is going to be twice slower than if you do the same exact operation with using Unity's curves or animation. So if you actually use the Unity animation timeline. So if you use this Unity animation timeline, or if you use the unit that I have here, it's gonna be twice slower. Just not your whole game, but the actual to perform this task. Not that is going to actually slow down, but the amount of time that it's going to take to actually run this animation compared to the animation in that is going to be twice slower. That means that like instead of the process of this unit taking I don't know, I can't really say what's the time wise. So let's say that it's 1/10 of a millisecond to run this in Unity using the timeline. Then in here it's gonna take 2/10 of a millisecond to run it. So you won't see the difference in the game, but the performance drop is there. If you start using a lot of these, so if you actually create like 1,000 cubes, no, I think I tried more than 1,000 cubes. I think I went with 10,000 cubes. And if you run this animation and and compare it with the running animation. In fact, let me actually show you guys what I mean. So this, I was inside the SPUC folder, and that's what inside the SPUC, but there is some things that I'm working for, like new tools that I'm working, and one of them is actually I'm looking at Minecraft and the mechanics that it has there to see what I can do, like what I can include in SPUC for that. And currently, so I have a map generation script that I was trying out with using Visual Scripting. So currently, I'm just gonna create a map. So I'm gonna use just a height map right now. So let me lower down the plane. Actually, in fact, let me turn it off. Okay, so there is the, okay. So right here, you can see that all of those units are actually animating, right? So it's at 30 by 30 by 10. Wait, why? No, the y doesn't matter. So 30 by 30 grid. So that's 600 units that I have right now in there that are animating at the same time. So if you look at the stats are currently running at 85 frames per second. And that's because you'll get a better performance if you actually run inside the game, but in the Unity editor, that's how it runs. And now if you have any performance issue, so you can actually go to analyze profiler and pull up the profiler, and inside here you can see what is actually drawing that performance. And one of them is animations. So the light blue one right here is animation. So currently it does do a big performance drop, but you can also see that the rendering is taking a long time too. And it's because, okay, I accidentally clicked it. And the green and the rendering takes a long time is because I have a lot of those separate units. So should have not paused it. So I have a lot of those separate units, separate cubes in my graph, and each cube actually, because the cubes are separate, it's taking a long time to render. So the more cubes you have, the longer it's going to be rendering. So the animation is taking 5 milliseconds for all of these cubes that I have here. It takes 5 milliseconds per frame to actually animate that. And that is, so if I take a look at one of those cubes, I'm actually using the animator here, right? So currently it's actually using the animator, it's not using my animation. Now, if I go and modify, sorry guys, I'm actually sidetracking, but I'm trying to actually, I mean, I think this is very important to actually understand for if you are trying to use both to understand that actual performance drop, like where it actually is going to be a problem. So if I actually add the script machine, and I'll use this graph right there. So this graph, if we take a look inside, I'm just using the scale animation, which comes with SPUC. So I scale it down to 0.8 and then scale it back up to 1. So that's animating using those units. And we can take a look at those super units if you guys actually are interested. But okay, let me move it to the side. It looks complicated. What looks complicated? Okay, so what did I do? Okay, let me render that again. So now with, well, actually it's a much bigger performance drop. Well, Okay, so now you can see that. Okay, I forgot that I have the flying animation. Okay, great. Oh, let me. Okay, so now you can see that actually the frames per second is much lower. In fact, what is it? It's like 5 or 4 times lower than it was instead of 2. But you also have to understand that visual scripting runs much slower in the editor than the actual game. So when you compile, it should the performance should increase. But you can see right now that it is slower, and I don't know, probably don't even need to go to profiler to know that it's going to be. So this is how it was before. You can see that the rendering time for the animation, and now this is how it looks right now. So instead of it was 5.5 milliseconds for animation, currently it's taking 49. Well, it has some spikes to 70, but it's 10 times. Yeah, based on this, the actual decrease is 10 times slower. But this is script. It's running in script, and the other one is in animation. So for things like that right there, you can see that you have to make choices what to actually use. And you have an option to use the timeline, which is another tool that you need to learn, but it will actually help you out a lot. And I think it's actually easier to do animations with a timeline than trying to write the script, even writing C# script. I have not tested with C# script and see what's the performance drop on that compared to using just the regular the timeline run animation. But so right there you can see that performance difference, but also let me try showing something else. But also I said that generation is actually pretty slow as well. And right here I'm gonna generate some 3D maps. So I'm gonna have 4 chunks. So currently you can see that it's loading one chunk, then load another chunk, loading another chunk. So it's roughly taking, I don't know, probably like close to 10 seconds to actually generate those chunks. And that's actually pretty slow. And again, this is what I said there. You will start noticing the difference. I still want to try out some improvements and see what's the best way to approach that in visual scripting. But if you do the same thing in C#, you'll see that it's actually much faster. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you're trying to create this kind of logic or this kind of things in your games, then you're going to have a much better performance improvement with using C#. So for those things, I would recommend to use actually C#, although it's going to be difficult, or it's going to be, I guess a bigger learning curve if you have never used any coding language before. But now let me try to actually create that in C#. So you can't see, okay. I don't actually have a I don't generate a chunk at a time, but you see that this map has been generated right here, the whole map right here, and that is 10 chunks by 10, and I think it's also, no, I think it's the same size as it was before. So, and it did all of this 10 by 10, that's 100 chunks, and it did it in 1.7 seconds in C#. So that's a big performance improvement for using C# versus Bolt. But again, some things you'll see it a lot, like with the amount of operations that are done for that generation, then you can see that big improvement. But for things that like just game mechanics for your game, you won't see the performance drop at all because of how much time it actually takes to run that. You won't see that difference unless you have, I guess, 1,000 players playing at the same time or something like that. Then will start seeing some performance drop. Okay, back to SPUC. So I hope you guys understand, right? The performance makes it clear. I think I should probably do like a separate video on this topic to compare the performance of Bolt and C#, and because I feel like a lot of people just say that the performance is lower, and that's it. But still, like, the performance is issue when you actually do a lot of operations. So when you use a lot of for loops and for loops inside of for loops and inside of for loops, then yes, that's where you would actually start seeing a lot of performance drops. Okay, so okay, does visual scripting slow down the performance? Okay, that was a long answer to that question, but that's a question that needs to be answered. It's like doing public void in C#, right? I'm not really sure what that is. Okay, I think because it looks similar to me. What was your question before here? You did tutorials about SPUC. Okay, not really sure what that was for. Hey, thanks for getting something somewhere now. Cheers. Okay. Great. Also, when I try to make a movement in my FPS, my character just rolls. Yes, make sure either you stop, put constraints for your rigid body to not rotate. That's probably will be a easy fix. Or you also need to remove friction. You need to remove friction for your character. Because if you're moving and you have friction, there's friction between planes, which will cause the rotation of your character. So that's just understanding physics will help you out with that. So in a rigid body, you have constraints, and you can create a constraint on rotations in any axis that you want. So whatever axis is causing you a problem, you can just turn on the constraint. Unless you're trying to use the rotation, the angular rotations. It's actual angular velocity, not rotation. Okay, hello, what's the should have on? It looks complicated. What looks complicated? Everything looks so complicated. Yeah, so everything, I see where you're coming from. Like, everything looks complicated once you start, whenever you start something new, it looks complicated. Because there's a lot of learning that you need to do, but you have to start small. So, and once you get the basics, you can do a lot. Same thing, like, I guess the closest thing that I can compare it to is like math. If you look at math, if you look at like calculus or something like that, that it just looks complicated, but you don't start with calculus right away. You start with learning the numbers, then you learn addition, subtraction, and so on. And by the time you get to calculus, you have already a lot of basic understanding of math that helps you out to understand calculus as well. Same thing here. You start with small things. I wouldn't suggest, I see this a lot, but a lot of people actually trying to, for the first game, to actually try to create a multiplayer. That's I wouldn't suggest doing that, because multiplayer is a difficult, I mean, it uses the same idea as a regular game, but there's another level of, I guess, problems that you have to think about when you're doing multiplayer games. So let's try making some simple single player games first, and then you can get into multiplayer. once your skills in creating games is a little bit higher. Would a shader make it faster to animate? Yes, the shaders will make it faster to animate because the shaders are using GPU for calculating it. So that if you create your animations with shaders, it will be faster. Can you make a video on how to spawn enemies using Bolt? You just spawn an enemy. If you're just using Bolt. I do have a spawn unit, but the spawn unit, actually, let's go inside here. The spawn unit inside here, so it does have some logic here, but the spawn unit, all it does is just component and it instantiates it. That's it. So there's a component instantiate and game object instantiate, and you can use any one of those to actually instantiate a new object in your game. Okay, so in this SPUC, there should maybe a set force in axis. In SPUC, there should be set force in axis. So there's a lot of units. So those things like set force. Let me see, set force. You can look for set force, and right here you can see find already a lot of options that you have here. But in Unity, it's actually under rigid body, and it's not set force, but actually add force, because you don't. I mean, you can set constant force, but if you're trying to apply a force, you use add force. So right there, so add force, and you can select mode. And for mode, you have force, acceleration, impulse, velocity, and that there's some difference between those, and you can specify in any direction that you want. So I guess OF music, you are coming from Buildbox, right? Is that what you used before? Or some kind of other. So there's you'll see a lot of units that you probably seen in Buildbox in here as well. But some of the units I did not create mount super units for. For instance, the keyboard input, I actually did include it in the list, but this is not a unit that I created. It exists. Same thing, I think, with the timer. Yeah, the timer right here. It exists, so I just added here. So I'm thinking of adding like a list of units that I guess will be helpful for. Oh, you used Unreal. Okay. That's right. You're the one who said that you used Unreal. So yeah, so it uses in Unity it uses add force. Unless you have, there is a set force if you are using constant force unit. I think constant force. If you're using constant force, then you can set force for it. So if you use a constant force component on your object, then you can actually use set force, and it's going to set the force for you. How do you get organized like that? How do you get organized these units? Is that what you're talking about? So the units right here, this graph, you can't actually run this graph in any of your game objects because it doesn't have the logic. It wasn't made to run the logic. It's just this is just to display all those the units that I have in SPUC. And these are just groups, so you can hold control down and create groups and put all the units that you want inside here. So I'm gonna actually start Okay, we're 46 into the live stream, so I'm gonna continue with what I had planned for today. So I have these super units, right, in SPUC, and they're broken down into categories. I tried to not create too much categories, so I have the controller category, movement category, action category, a random category, game life cycle, which has things like pause, resume, and also hide and show objects. And I also have level control here, level completed and level next and stuff like that inside here. Could have created a separate category for it, but I see no point just yet, but maybe later on I'll create a separate category for it. And then animations category, there's another animation that I'm thinking of creating, but well, yeah, another type of animation. And then I also have some UI elements and scores. The score is actually one of the newer categories because it had a lot of units. In fact, these units are also part of score, but they're also part of UI. So I decided to keep them in UI right now because that's the dishes. So all these categories that exist here, and under each category, the units can go both in like several categories, but I just try to, like, I guess, put it somewhere where it's more used. It makes more sense, actually. Yep, set time scale to a negative integer float. Does it rewind? Never tried setting it to negative, but I would think it actually will cap it at 0. Because yeah, there's a lot of problems with reverting time. So if you have timers, there isn't a way you can actually revert the timers and stuff like that. Can't really undo things that you have done unless you keep an active state of all executions that you did, which probably Unity doesn't do that. Okay, so let's go over. By the way, do you guys have any questions about SPUC in particular, like some kind of unit that you need explanation how to use? I'll start explaining the basic idea behind this. So something that you'll see a lot throughout the units are this enable and disable. And with all the enable and disable, you also see this enable on start. So these 5, I guess, connections that you have here, they are in a lot of units. And that is due because stream is currently right. And that is so that it keeps the state if you want to listen for the touch or not, and at any point you can disable it or enable it with other logic. So where would this actually work? So for instance, if I have, I want to use isTouch, I'll duplicate this. So if I have an isTouch unit, that means that if I click on that object, that specific object. The touch is just if you touch the screen, so anywhere you touch is going to trigger this unit. But if you touch on a specific object in the game that has a box collider on it, not box collider, but any collider on it, then this unit is going to be triggered. So the two options are here is if you pressed on the item. So if you actually, if your mouse button is down or your finger is down, then it's going to send out a pressed command, and pressed flow trigger, and if you have released, it's going to send the release. So that's pretty straightforward. How you can use this is with combination for something like move, right? So if you want your object to start moving, your object to start moving when you click on that object, you can connect it like this. So on pressed, I will enable, so I'll disable this enable on start. If I press on that object, it's gonna start moving at 5 speed. And if I release that object, it's gonna start moving. So that's one of the options that you have here. And you can do the same thing for rotation scale, because they have enable and disable options. But you can also do that with something like touch rotate. Touch rotate, well, yeah, I guess touch rotate or any of these. So touch rotate, touch move, or something like that. So if I pressed on the item, on that specific item, then the touch move unit is going to be affecting that specific object. It's not going to be affecting other objects unless you have just enable and start turned on. And you'll be able to move one specific item at a time, which is a pretty nice effect. Like you have multiple controls. Basically, you can control different objects in your game with just having this kind of mechanic right there. So this is where the enable and disable comes in hand, or like pretty good. So one of the units that I have here is 4-way swipe, and this one does not have enable and disable. So that is one addition that I'm going to be doing. I'll be adding this here. It does create, I guess, a little bit more clouded, or it has more options and makes it more, like, I guess, messy. But it's a standard thing that I have, and if you understand how it works in one place, I mean, you'll understand it everywhere. And you can see that those big units are the ones that actually have those options in there. So currently, because I don't have it in here, if I add the 4-way swipe here, it will be moving the object. Like, basically you can't control it unless you used a state machine or a state unit. So if we actually use the state unit, and inside the state unit, we use that, where is it? 4-way swipe, 4-way swipe. If we put it inside here, then we can connect it with enable or disable. And this way we'll be able to control the 4-way swipe. So with changing the state of this unit. So if we stop, old execution inside this unit is going to stop. If we start old execution in that unit, it's going to start. So 4-way swipe. So if you have logic that you need to actually use a state machine. So that's one of the things that is, I don't have a unit for it, like a state machine that you would see in Buildbox or something like that. I don't have that, and it's because of the level of complexity that actually adds if you actually want to do that. So there are state machines in Visual Scripting. So this is a state machine right there. And inside here, you can actually create multiple states. Let's create a script state or super state. And you can make transitions between them, right? Or like this. So you can have multiple states. And I do have a video about state machines if someone is interested in that. Just a basic, I don't have that much videos, but I think I used for AI tutorial that I was doing. I did a state machine there, used a state machine there. So that is how the units are set up, the enable and disable. All right, and that's how you can use the pressed and released. So you can see similar things. So for touch, there you look almost identical for what the options are here. Now the UI button has a UI button object input, and if you click on this, you can only select assets, and you can't see the game objects that are inside your scene. That is because this unit is actually a graph. So you can see the source is actually a graph. So it can't actually access the objects from the scene. If you use an embedded, if you actually create, let me switch the project. SPUC. I'll always run tests with this one so that I don't mess up any of any existing ones. So inside here, you can see that I'm using this graph. And if I use that unit, what was it, UI button, I don't have access to those, any of the units that are inside my graph. So for that, you can only have access if you actually use an embedded. So if I use embedded, if I go to add a graph, and now I look for UI button, then I can treat any of the things inside of my scene as the game object that I want to use to control it. So for instance, in my UI, I have restart. So if I want to do something on restart, if you click on restart, I can run this logic here. But that is not actually common. Like using embedded is really uncommon unless you're just doing some quick prototyping. Because usually you create prefabs, and once you create a prefab, you want to use a graph. Oops, almost literally drawn. You want to use a graph. So the way that you have to approach this with the way that you have to approach it inside here is you have to actually find that game object. So game object find, and you can pass in the name of the game object. Restart. And now this is going to be actually the connection, the connection. That's how it's going to look like. So I'm actually considering having the search built inside here, because I think that's the most common way that it's going to be used. So that is a change that you can expect. So that's how that unit works. For a swipe, just based on the swipe direction, it's gonna actually trigger that unit, trigger that flow. Then we have the touch rotate. If it's enabled, then by dragging on the screen, you'll be rotating it on the x-axis. So that is also an option. And this screen, so okay, with these units right here, you can see some new things that are introduced here. So the screen X and Y. Screen X means the drag in the X direction. So if you drag your mouse in the horizontal, it's going to affect, so currently it's going to affect the Y axis of the rotation. So if I drag it this way, it's going to be rotating the object on the Y axis, and it's not going to touch the other axis. Screen Y is currently set to 0. That means if I drag the mouse in the Y direction, it's not going to actually rotate anything. So if you want, for instance, if you rotate around if you move vertically your mouse, if you want to rotate around the x-axis, then you can specify like, okay, I want to, if you move your mouse in Y direction in a vertical movement, then I want to rotate around the x-axis, and 20 is the speed of the rotation. The smoothness is basically basically the acceleration of the rotation. So once you start moving the mouse, it's gonna be accelerating and getting to that 20 speed, and then once you stop moving, it's gonna decelerate and go back to 0. So that's a smooth start and smooth end. Or any change in, like, if you start moving faster or slower, there's going to be some head softness to smoothness to those changes, and it's going to look more, I guess, flowing. Is there? Okay, there's some. If you set time scale to run. Okay. Is there a unit where it repeats an action, like I want to create an aircraft type of a game? So you have dodge incoming enemies, and I want it to continuously spawn enemies. So how can I do that? Okay, so whenever you want to spawn enemies continuously, that means you're dealing something with time. So timers, and those are the options that you want for that. And we'll take a look at that question in a short once we get to the timer. Allow your channel and focus on visual scripting. Great to hear that. Hello and hi and bye. Okay. So that's the screen X and Y. So I hope you guys understand that and what smoothness is. Touch move and touch scale works same way, except the effect is something different. The keyboard input I just added here in case someone not sure how to do keyboard input. This is the unit that you want, and you can specify what action and what's the key that you're looking for. But if you want to disable, if you want to disable this, the use of keyboard input events, you can see that now you have to actually use a state machine to disable any keys for your game. And using state machines are for large graphs, for your graphs is actually really smart. There's other ways you can achieve the same like state machine control, and it is by disabling their graphs. So that's kind of I guess manual way of controlling the state of your logic. Where you would actually need to use this, like for instance disabling the keyboard input. For instance, if you are actually you have a character, right, and you have the ability for the character to walk, and you use WSD to walk around. Now if the character gets into the car or something like that, or some kind of vehicle, you want to trigger a different graph that's going to be controlling how the how you can use WSD keys to actually control the movement of the car and the vehicle. So you would have a different graph for that. You having all the changes in the same graph for character movement and vehicle movement is going to be pretty messy. So you would want to actually disable the character movement and enable the vehicle movement script. And using a state, you can achieve that by using a state machine. So if the state check that you do is like if the character is not in the vehicle, then you use one graph, and if the character is in the vehicle, you use another graph. And that's basically a state of the character. I'll be doing more. I think I can answer your question. I can't answer their question. I have to go now. Bye. Okay, thanks for stopping by. So now these are the controls. If you have any suggestions for any more controls units that you want to see, you can actually add that. So by the way, let's been already an hour, and I want to like I guess I should have probably set it up, say up front what we're going to be doing in this video, and I just want to go over like just an overview of the units and try to explain what the setup and how they can be used, so that you have more understanding of the idea behind the idea and the design behind all these units, because I tried to keep the same pattern, like as little as possible, like pattern differences, so that'd be like more understandable how to use it. So that's why you can see this enable disable. If that pattern exists in a unit, it works exactly the same for all the units. And if you have for instance screen X and screen Y, you can see that throughout all those units. So you can see, like, if you understand one of those units, you will be able to understand the other units as well. So for movement, we have the same like similar, I guess, here for rotation and for the scale. The only difference is follow rotation for the move unit. So the follow rotation option for the move unit, and the other ones don't really have follow rotation, but basically you specify the speed that you want to do something at. So if you want to move, what units per second you want to move, rotation, what units per second you want to rotate, and scale, how much units per second you want to scale. And you specify, if it's enabled, it's going to be making that change at whatever the units per second. So the speed is actually units per second. That's why I try to make that. Although probably the more correct term here will be velocity, because there is direction that you passing. It's not just speed, you're passing direction, but just decided to keep it at speed. Then jump. So there's a jump force, and I do use for jump force, I just use a set velocity. So that means that it's not a force that is applied over a certain period of time, or a force that is applied instantaneously. It's actually, it sets the velocity to the to whatever you specify. So if your character is actually falling down and the current acceleration of your character is actually going to be, let's say, 20 units a second, so it's falling pretty fast, then if you click if you trigger the jump, it's actually going to set the velocity to 10 units in the up direction. So it's not with force. If you would actually use force instead of setting velocity, it will like if you travel 20 units, if you add 10 force, that means it's going to be traveling like 10 units. It's going to be traveling 10 units downwards still. So you have to, although you click jump, it will slow down the fall, but it won't actually get you go up. So that's the reason why I decided to use for the jump unit to actually use velocity. I think that's a little bit more understandable in that way, and that's the, I guess, common use of it. It's not realistic, but that's how that jump unit works. Position limiter, rotation limiter, and scale limiter. Basically, okay, for the position limiter, rotation limiter. So the rotation limits, it's actually from 180. I have not changed it here. So the rotation limits is between negative 180 and 180, and that is because that's how unit works. So it stores the values of rotation between negative 80 and negative 180 and 80. If you actually
go over, so if you actually go like 181, it's gonna actually switch to negative 179. So it actually like keeps the values between those. And you can specify your minimum and maximum. So for rotation limiters, if you want the rotation to have no limits, you can keep it at negative 180 to 180. If you want to rotate in the y-axis, for instance, 45 degrees to 45, you can specify that, and it's going to limit your y rotation to 45, but the other angles can be, but the other rotations can be anywhere. So that's how the limiter works. Same thing with scale limiter, so you can specify what's your maximum and what's your minimum scales, and it will keep the scales at that. And position limiter, also you can specify limit the position. So if you want your character to stay within 4 units, you can specify -2 in one direction and -2 in the other direction. Hello. Hello, can I ask what is the difference in script machine, flow machine? The script machine and flow machine are exactly the same. And I think I replied to your question. You wrote a question in, they are exactly the same. The difference in there is because of the switch from Bolt to Visual Scripting. Unity is making changes to some naming, and with this just, so that's just a naming. There's going to be more naming changes that, as far as I know, that they're coming up. So we'll see some changes in names. Now, why super units of flow machines not work in the script machine is because for flow machine you are using Bolt, and for script machines you are using Visual Scripting. Now, they do work. It's just one thing that you have to do when you import the graphs. So if you import the super units from Bolt, you have to go and so from Bolt to Visual Scripting, you have to go to the project settings, and I've showed that in a video, but I'm still getting a lot of questions about that. And right here under Visual Scripting, you have to run this fix missing scripts. So if you're importing any projects from Bolt to Visual Scripting, you need to run this fix missing scripts, because the script was actually changed. The script that was used for I guess converting that asset into a graph, it has been changed in Visual Scripting. So you have to run this fix missing script, and it's going to fix it for you. Now, it does not work the other way around. You can't import from currently. I mean, I tried it in this version, so I don't know if they're going to be adding the support, but it doesn't work the other way around. If you created a graph super unit in Visual Scripting, you can't convert it back into Bolt script. Because the although it does have fix missing scripts option in Bolt, I've tried it and it actually does not recognize the scripts and the graphs or super units that you've created with Visual Scripting. So keep that in mind. Whatever you create with Visual Scripting, you can't move it back to Bolt. But I think I don't know. I think if you're using Visual Scripting, I would suggest to using Visual Scripting or Bolt. I would suggest to actually switch to the Unity 2021 and use Visual Scripting, because there's some changes that are going to be changing, and it's just going to be better to just switch right now. Unless you're far into the project, then you kind of, I mean, you can start migrating right now or later it won't make a big difference right now. So one unit that I know that is actually deprecated in Visual Scripting is the add unit that was in Bolt. So in Visual Scripting, it's actually they used the sum unit that was exist in Bolt instead of the add unit. So they dropped the add unit, and the sum and the add unit are the same in Visual Scripting. Just okay, and why screens? Okay, been doing the stuff in your script. So I have been doing this. I think it's almost a year since I started using Bolt. Actually, I think it was. Yeah, you can look up on the channel when my first video was, and I started actually. There's a game jam, Bolt game jam that was happening, and I decided to try out Bolt, and that's where I started actually using Bolt. And the first video is basically the first time when I used Bolt. I think the same day, or I used it a day before that, or something like that. Because I started doing the video and decided to share that what I learned with other people that need help with that. But so for half a year it was still called Bolt, and then I think starting close to the new year or something like that, whenever Unity released 2021.1 version, officially released, that's when it switched to Visual Scripting. And I still have Bolt in the titles, but the title of this live stream doesn't have Bolt, but that's how it is. Okay, so back to here. Back to the question. So that's limiters, and then I have the camera follow. The camera follow is just as if you have it, it will be following the object that you have the camera follow in, and you can specify at what speed you want to follow it. And that's it. Now stop move detection, that's a unit. I think it is actually pretty useful in cases, for instance, where is I have a flappy false switch. What have I changed here? I think it's all for no, not false switch. So it's actually the demo game probably that I created. Was it? No. Okay, the side scroller. So the side scroller demo that I created, I actually used a false stop move unit here. And the stop move unit is for if you, for instance, get stuck behind that platform, after detecting that you have stopped moving, then it actually triggers the game over. So that's one of the options that uses for that stop move unit. And you can also trigger some other states based on, like, if you hit something, well, not hit something, but if you like move something that you're not supposed to move, or some stuff like that. It does have some tolerance, so you can actually have some speed tolerance and time that tolerance, meaning how long it needs to stop within that speed for it to actually trigger the trigger that. event. By the way, okay, put video 1 million views, put an educational video 10k views. Yeah, the educational videos are like, they're not entertainment, so that's okay. So I see that that there's the viewers are dropping, and I did say that I was gonna provide the instructions, and for those how to enter the drop, I guess drop, or just the free key that I'm going to provide for SPUC. So for those that decide to stay, I'm going to how you enter. I thought about it. What's the best way of doing it? You can go to join my Discord server. Let me see. Wait. Let me try to create an invite. So I'm gonna create an invite. I want to invite to a specific channel. I think it should go to a specific channel. Let me see. Yes, it does. Good. Okay, so let me find my stream again. So here is a link to the Discord server. This is my Discord server, and the channel that you should go to is the Twitch chat. This is not a Twitch stream, but that's the channel that I have that I think I'll be fine to use that for. So you can go to there, and you can just what words should you write? Just write SPUC. Go there and just write SPUC, and I'll consider whoever writes that in that Discord channel for the draw, and I'll do a random I'll choose a random person from there and send a key to that person for the package. I'll send a direct message. So that's the instructions for if you guys are interested. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so but let's continue on. So I want to get to that question of spawning enemies. Who asked that? Okay. Or did he leave? Mike, are you still here? The Mike who asked about spawning enemies. Because I don't know, if Mike is not here, then I might as well just continue with the program. Okay, so until I get a reply. So the actions that we have here, very common used node, if collide. That this unit is actually like, I don't know, this I use it so much in my games and stuff like that. But inside here, it is, I guess, pretty complicated because well, not that complicated, but because I'm using the on trigger listens and on collision listeners, and basically it's listening for 2D and 3D. And but it should be pretty simple. It's just should have been just on trigger enter and using the tag filter, and that's it. but because of all of the variations of triggers and the variations of collisions and the 2D and exit enter, it creates a big graph. But this unit actually simplifies it all. It just has one unit that you can use. The tag filter is actually if you want to filter specific spawn enemies. How do you get organized like that? Okay, spawn enemies. Yeah, I'm not sure if Mike is here anymore. Like, he's not. He hasn't been active in chat after that question, so he might have left. So on if collide, you can use the tag filter, and that's if you're guys are not familiar what a tag filter is basically the name right here, tag player, and you can filter by that tag. So if I want to just listen for collision with player, you can just say player here, and any collision that's going to happen with the player, that's going to happen. If you leave it empty, you probably should add a summary about this, but if you leave it empty, it's actually trigger if collide on any object. So if you leave it empty, anything that you collide with or anything that you trigger with, it's actually gonna enter. It's gonna enter into this unit, and you'll enter and exit that collision. You get the object right here, the object output, and that's the object that you collided with. So if you want to do anything with that object, or you want to see what that object is, or do some other things with the object, you can use this object. One thing that you can do with that object is actually remove it. So you can, for instance, on enter, you can connect it. You can connect that object to be removed, and basically if you collide that object, it's going to remove it. So that is an option that you have there. Now spawn is very simple right now. All it is either you spawn it as a child or not. You pass the asset in here. Inside here, it's actually spawning at the position of the object. So that is one thing that I do here. No matter what, like if you spawn as a parent or not, it's still gonna spawn at the same position of the location of the object. So that's not a standard with component instantiate or game object instantiate. It's not a something that comes. You actually have to you have different options, and instead of using this, you can use like game object instantiate. I don't remember why I used component instantiate instead of game object instantiate, but so you can instantiate, and you have options for original, position, and rotation. You can specify that, and you can do the same thing with the parent, and a couple other options that you have here. So this is how basically how in instantiate unit compared to spawn is. You can pass the original, but thus the instantiate, if you want to set the position, you also have to always provide the rotation. So that's one thing they have to do. I'm thinking of adding more options here, but currently it's really simple what it's doing. And the reason why I'm using a spawn unit, because I'm planning to add the object pulling option also in the spawn unit. I do have a prototype of it already that I've been working on it, but I have not added here. It will only make sense for things like spawning bullets and stuff like that. The other objects, unless you spawn them and remove them oftenly, it makes no sense to actually do the object pulling for the things that you just do it once or twice. Okay, so the remove, I guess it works with the spawn. You can just pass in the object you want to remove, and it removes. If, okay, so let me see. I have some logic that so some of the objects, for instance, here, did I do the same thing here? Okay, so for spawn unit, if you are not specifying an asset, it's actually going to write a spawn unit does not have a game object set, so it's going to actually throw you an error. Well, just write an warning in the console. But for remove unit, if you don't actually specify an object, it will actually fall back to this object. So it's gonna, so if I run it like this without an passing object, it's gonna actually remove this game object. So that is, I try to, where that makes sense, I try to have that persistent. So this will be the same for UI button, as far as I know. So right there, I have a null check, and it falls back to this. So if you go to add UI button press inside of the UI button, then you don't have to specify this in here. If you have it none, it will fall back to this. And you'll see that also with show, although for show it doesn't really make sense, because you can't have a logic inside of something that is hidden and that will be able to show itself. If you need to show, like enable a game object from outside, so some kind of parent or script that is enabled can only use this show. But for hide, it makes sense. So it will actually, if you want to hide the object, just if you don't pass anything, it will hide itself. And that's all the game object. So yeah, so that's pretty persistent. But for this one, for the spawn, I decided to not add that fallback, because that might create some unwanted behaviors, meaning if you don't specify the object here, it will actually clone itself, and which is gonna kind of, I guess, create a weird behavior. How do you get the color coding like that? Color coding, so you can, if you create a graph, group, if you create a group, so I said already, so if you hold control on the keyboard and drag, and that creates a group. And then if you want to change the color, the options right here, you can change the color. You can also write some comments if you want. And the comments should be visible, I think, when you, I guess when you just select the group. That's the only time when you see the comments, and you can change the name of it as well. Colors, so that's the colors. So that is how the organization. Okay, can you please, yeah, unban me from your server? Whether I did. Yes, Zion. The reason why I banned, I don't know if you got the reason or not, because I got some messages from people that you were sending direct messages to members of the server, and I guess soliciting your own product or something like that, and kind of misleading them with some information. So I'll look at, yeah. Okay, so that's the remove. So now timer. So spawning enemies using a timer. This is where Mike wanted to see, but I don't think he's no longer here. So you can spawn enemies by using a timer, or you can spawn enemies by using an cooldown. So cooldown would be easier to use than a timer for spawning enemies because, for instance, for spawning enemies, let's actually... So let me actually show that. So for instance, if you want to spawn enemies every so often, you can use the update. So you want to do it on update. And when you use cooldown unit, you can control what's the duration, how fast you'll spawn. So if you want to spawn an enemy every 1 second, you can pass 1 second. If you want to spawn an enemy every 5 seconds, the cooldown is gonna block the update from running past here. So whenever it's ready, it's gonna actually, so 5 seconds passes, then it's gonna spawn the enemy, and you can pass then the enemy here. Now, for enemy, for instance, you probably, unless you have some enemy logic, you have some enemy logic that makes the enemy position get different behavior or different position. The way that you can set different positions is after you spawn the object, you can set position. So currently you can pass in the object this way, and you can set a random position here. Now I have some random position units that are in the works, so I'll get that. That will be available soon, but you can use a random unit sphere. Get inside unit circle. So you can use a sphere or a unit circle. The only problem with that, so get random get on unit circle. That means it's going to be on the using the radius, or you can use the gets inside unit circle, and that's one of the options here. You can multiply by what's the use generic and multiply by the radius of the circle that you want. So if you want the unit to be spawned like 3 units around you can use 3. And then if you want, if you don't want the unit to be spawned in the y-axis, for instance, you just want it to be spawned on x, you can set the x-axis to, well, not x-axis, so set y-axis. So set y-axis to 0, and that's going to clear it for you. And so, okay, there we go. And you can enable chainable, so you can pass that object, that calculated vector. So that's how you can create a random right now, but I will create another unit. I'll add another units for randomizing the position and stuff like that. That will simplify this process. Excuse me. So that is pretty much, yeah, so this part right there is for randomizing the position, but if all the logic for the enemy and the movement and all of that is inside the enemy, then all you do is just do that. And for the duration, if you want to randomize how frequent, you can do a random range, minimum and maximum, inclusive, exclusive. You can use the inclusive because that's going to give you floats. And you can specify, like, for instance, from negative, well, no, that's in seconds. So 1 second is going to be the fastest that is going to spawn, and like 10 seconds the slowest. So it's going to spawn between 1 to 10 seconds, the enemy is going to spawn. And again, you can increase that. So if you want to increase with time, you decrease the maximum inclusive based on the time and stuff like that. So there's lots of options that you can grow from here, but that's just the basic start using a timer or a cooldown. I probably should add cooldown here as well. Let's do that, because I think the cooldown unit is actually real cool. Okay, that was a joke. Yeah, the cooldown. You can achieve a similar thing with the timer, but the cooldown unit is available here, so you can is available by this. Actually, these aren't my units; these are Visual Scripting units. So just letting you guys know, these are not mine. The ones that I have are the ones that just super units, just plain super unit icon. Currently, they don't have. I wish they added a icon. They can change icon for super units. That'd be cool. Then I could have custom icons for my units. But currently, that's not an option. Oops. Okay, then I have a send and receive units. Now that is for events. And the reason why I created send and receive, because this will actually be a global. So it's going to be, the idea behind these units are sending events globally through all of the game. So anyone in any object in the game, well, not in the game, but in the scene that is currently active, it will be able to receive this event. So that's why I added that. But if you want to trigger a custom event on a specific object, there is something called custom events. So custom events right here. And these units, the send and receive, if you take a look, they are built on custom events. But basically, you can use custom events to trigger on trigger. So right there, trigger custom events. So you can use these two units to actually. This category is getting pretty big. You can use these custom events right there to trigger a custom event on a specific unit. So on a specific object. So you can see that right there you have the object that you can pass in that you want to trigger this event. And yeah, you have to have the custom event attached to that object, and then if you want to trigger the event on that object, you need to pass the the game object that you want to trigger it on. So that's how it works. But the receive and send units are globally, so they will they basically can if I send it from here, anyone that is going to be listening for this receive event is going to be actually getting that event, no matter which game object they're in. Also, you have the arguments option, so you can specify how much arguments you want to pass, which are just data points, and you can pass them and receive them. So that's how the custom events works. Set color. You can specify the color. I guess it's just a simple change of color, and the options currently that I have here is set color for material. So if you want to change a color for the mesh renderer material that you have, or set color for the sprite renderer if you're rendering if you're running a 2D game and you have a sprite inside of your game, you can do that. Or if you have an image in UI, it will also that. So it will actually use three of these options. And I'm thinking I'm gonna actually add text option as well here. So I need to write that down because that was on my list to do and it's not here yet. So that you can change the text color as well with this set color. So that one unit basically can be used for more than one. And get color just gets color from those units. Zero friction basically sets the friction of a 2D collider or a 3D collider to 0 so that you'll have no friction. I mean, this unit is probably not necessary. You can usually how you do zero friction is by creating a physics material. So you go to create new physics material, and inside here, that's where you specify that you want zero static friction, zero dynamic friction, and then minimum for average instead of average, so that basically it's going to be no friction. And then for the object, for instance, for my player, if I want to apply zero friction, I can pass it as the material that I want to use for this player, and then there's going to be no friction. So what will that do? So okay, I just passed zero friction for my player, and you'll see that the player will stop actually rotating once it's moving. It's going to be sliding. You see, it's like player is actually sliding right now. If I actually have, let me see, if I disable this friction, so if I remove that physics material and click play now, because of friction, the cube is actually going to start rotating. Right there, see? The only by the way, if you ever see okay, let me see. Let me show that again. So when you click play, if you see this lag that you're getting, see the lag that you're getting, and it's like, it looks like it's jumpy and there's like frame drops or something like that. And the frame rate is actually pretty slow. If you're experiencing that, then what you want to do is the reason why it happens is if you have the player selected. So one of the things is if you have the player selected, then Unity actually has this I guess of a frame thing that is going on, and it's because it's displaying all this information in the about that object. So it's changing inside your game view, and it's also changing it here. And it seems on my, at least on my machine, it actually creates this kind of effect. So if you unselect the player, so I'll show you that. Like if I start the game, if I unselect the player, you can see that it starts actually smoothing, or runs smooth now. So if you have the player selected, it starts doing that. If you unselect it, it stops doing that. It's just this is what happens in the Unity editor. And the same thing works with if you have graphs. If you have graphs open and you're experiencing this kind of behavior, also the visual graphs, because they're trying to show all the values and stuff like that, it actually slows down, creates that effect. So that's what the zero friction is just setting that. Random units, pretty straightforward, I guess. It's just if you want to do random events, instead of doing the same thing each time, you can trigger different kind of events using these units. So adding some randomization. The threshold is basically it will randomize between zero. It will randomize over and under, means if the value from 0 to 1. So if the value is 0.1, that means that 90% is going to go over and 10% is going to go under. So you can actually treat it as like a percentage of some sort. So if you want 1% chance of doing something, you can do 0.01, and that means 1% that under is going to happen. I think it was 0.7. 0.5 would be 50%, which are this unit right here. That's 50% is going to go out. And 1 and 50% is going to go out too. So these are just split evenly for the percentage of randomization. And this one you can actually control. Okay, so let's look at the game life cycle. Any more questions? It looks like only one person is actually interested in getting the SPUC, the key for getting SPUC. So I guess he's gonna be the lucky one. But I'll do if anyone else actually is gonna try wants to get it. So again, if someone wants to get the SPUC, like all these super units that are shown here, if you want to get access for these units, I'll be doing a random giveaway to whoever is interested. So how to apply for that, you can go to the link right here for the last link that I posted. Let me repost it again. So you can go to this link and just write SPUC so that I know which user to contact in case if you're the winner. Currently there's only one person, so that one person has 100% chance of winning, but the next person, if it's gonna be a 50% if anyone is interested. Just a reminder. Okay, so let me see, we were at the game lifecycle, but I guess everyone else in the live stream right now already has access to it. That's cool. That is nice to hear that. Okay, we got one more person that is interested in the giveaway. Okay, and I think I'll repeat that a couple more times before I'll end the stream, but you can do that at any time. Okay, so let's go continue with the game life cycle. The game life cycles are this category is basically like I guess a little bit more of object management and time management in some sorts, because pause and resume is managing time. Restart scene is restarting the scene, the game, not the game, but restarting that level that you are from start. And then show and hide is controlling the game objects. So that the show and hide is basically set active. Show and hide, all they do is use the set active unit. Active game object set active, so it's either true or false, and then you can pass in this or any object. But I guess it's easier for me to find the units if I use show and hide, so that's why I just use those. And also, if you're going to be doing constantly showing and hiding one of the objects, you can use this unit that combines both of those, show and hide, together. So that's an option that you have there. Level complete is, and all of these are level. So for level, I did do a tutorial about levels already. So if someone is interested in how to create levels, I do have a level. It's one of the recent ones actually. A level tutorial. Hello, I'm 20 King. Welcome to the stream. So this is the video for levels, how to create levels. That is, you can look more into how to create levels, but so there's a level complete, which is if you complete a level, you trigger this one, and then you get an output if you have a next level or don't have a next level. That way you can decide if you want to show load the next level, or if you want to display something else, like load another scene or do some kind of other behavior if you have no more levels. If the game is completely complete, you might want to do something else. So that's the level completed, and then you have the load the next level, which is gonna which is going to trigger the load next level controller. And for this one, for the load level complete and for the load next level, and for basically any of these level units, you actually have to have a level level controller in your game. So right here, for this game object, I have a level controller game. So this is a little bit more like actually like a level system already. It's not just a super unit, it's actually a whole system that is working here. And the level controller is basically and here you have the option of specifying the list of levels that you have and the order you want to load them. So sequential, random, sequential, then random. You have some options here, and you can specify the levels that like the list of all the levels that you have in your game. So this game actually has 2 levels. And let me see if I can demonstrate. Okay. So let me. So currently I'm at level 2, and right now if I complete this level, if I'll be able to complete this level, should be pretty simple. But let's not try to get those points in. Okay, good, I have a double jump. So if I complete this level, then I get you did it. And then if you click on the you did it, you can see that you start the game all over because I have restart game. So if I completed level 1, it loads next level, and the next level is level 2. So that's how the game loop works here. Well, it's a very short game, but basically that's how you can use the level controller and level units to create the game. And those templates are also in SPUC, and you can actually take a look at those and how they're set up. So that I try to demonstrate like the mechanics and stuff like that using that. Okay, so that's pretty much it what I have for game lifecycle units. The animations, pretty straightforward. You have position, rotation animations, and color animations. The options that you have here is their duration and specify what's the value. Now the value can be either is delta, meaning that each time you run this animation is going to be moving 2 units to the side, or you can do a the actual position, so whatever the current position is. And if you want to move this game object to, for instance, 1010, then you can, if you trigger this, it's going to move to that position, so 1010. If it's delta, then it's going to be moving by 10 units each time. And you have start and started. So if you want to run multiple animations at a time, you can use the started, or continue your logic, you can use that. And if you want to chain multiple animations or do something after the animation is done, you can use the done option. Similar for, let me revert back to that. Same thing for rotation animation, scale animations, just doing something different. For color animation, you can see the same options here, except you have color. You can choose a color. And I also have a subtract option. Now the subtract might be not really that obvious what it's for, but basically if you use is delta, that's where the subtract or the subtract is actually going to make a difference. So when you're using delta, if you want to, for instance, if you want to increase the color of your brightness of your object. Then you can specify, okay, I want to increase the brightness by 73 in all of these. And or you can use the opacity. You can also actually use the opacity for it as well. And it's going to actually start adding those values. It's going to start adding values, those values to your color, and eventually it's going to go to white. Now, if your color starts with white, how do you get back to black? So that's where the subtract actually comes in. So if you enable subtract, then if you start with dark, it's actually going to be decreasing by like 58 units right here. It's going to be decreasing the color, and eventually you're going to get to black. So that's the idea behind the subtract. So in case someone is going to be using that, I hope that actually clears that up. Okay, I think it's time for another. Okay, so again, reminder, if anyone is interested in getting this collection, I mean a free copy of this collection, I'm giving away one free copy. The instructions are go to the Discord link that I have, and under the Twitch chat you can post you can write SPUC, and that you'll be considered for the draw of the free license key. Okay, so that is the animations. The UI animation, the UI currently, I have the score. Let's actually get score, and then I'll go through the configure these two units. So the score right here is, if you want to add points, straightforward. It keeps the total. So the add points and add coins, it will use this options right here. It's going to use 1. So it's just a short version of this. So 1, and use the option for current and total, and score points. Now, the difference between current and total, so current is going to keep the points for the current level or the current scene. So once you start a new scene, the points are going to be counted for that scene, and it will also be counted towards your total. Now you have other options. So if you want to just count your current, and where you want to use that is if you want to apply the points that you collect after you have passed the level, and you don't want to give points like the count of the points that you collected during level. If you failed, then you can use the current, and it will only add points to the current. After you won the level, then you can get the score, so you can get the current points and add them to the total. So you'll at the end we'll be able to do this. So add score to total points, and that way you can make sure that only if someone successfully completes the level, then they will get the points. That's the idea behind that. And current and total will be just any points you collect, they'll be counted in current and total. When the current when you count current, so if you use any of these options, the current or current total, you are also counting the best points, so the best score they get. So at the display, that will make sense when you're going to be displaying. So score, well, actually you'll see it here. Set score for best total. Come on, for scene score, you can see that there's total, current, and best, and you can get the same thing: current, best, and total. The other option here is the custom. So if you select custom, then you can write your own custom type that you want to use for the score. And that will be, for instance, if you want to, I don't know, if you want to select, have a custom type of that, then you can use that custom type, and you will be able to use that custom type to get it, set it, or to display it right there. So that is how the custom works. And I think that's pretty much the set and score and get scored. I mean, it's pretty much straightforward, same thing. And now to display, before I had just these 2 units and these 2 units for displaying. So UI points and UI coins. So these you can actually add as a graph for your game object, for your script machine, and it's going to work because it doesn't have inputs and outputs. It's just has its logic of its own. But if you use UI score, you actually have inputs and outputs, so you have to actually create a graph to display to use this unit's UI score. And you have more options here now, so you can display total, current, best, and you can display points, coins, or custom. So that's quick how the score works. The one thing for best, the best is counted for the level that you're currently in. So each level will be counting its best score. So you have if you use the level controller that I have here, then it will actually count in best score for that. If you don't use a level controller, it's just gonna count the total. I mean, not total, but basically the whole game, the infinite rudder. It's treated as just the best for the whole game, or the whole level. So if you have your own level controller, then you're gonna have to create your own. You're gonna have to create your own type of counting for the best points and stuff like that. But if you use the one that I have here, which I think is pretty good, if there's any suggestions for the level controller, let me know. I'll try to add. And now these 2 units, but I think they're pretty powerful because it's a whole system that goes inside those 2 units. So these 2 units are basically, I was thinking of how to actually control UIs, how to work with UIs, because the problem with UIs is you want to show some UI and hide some UIs. Now you can't, you could have used, like, I guess the send and receive units to achieve that, but if the UI is disabled, that means that no script inside of that UI is going to run. So if the game object is disabled, no script in that UI. So I worked out this solution of using these 2 units. So you have show and hide unit, and then you have configure UI. How does that work? So if the configure UI goes onto this the canvas. So inside the canvas, you attach the configure UI. It's just a script that runs, and what it does, it adds all of the units. It adds all of the, not units, but all the game objects inside it. So all the children, it adds all of those names and gets a reference point to it. Which I could have avoided, but and then show UI. What show UI does, it basically when you specify the UI name, it uses one of those registered names. So if I say, for instance, restart here, it will find that restart, although it's disabled. It will be still able to find that restart option here. Otherwise, in Unity, if you have an item is disabled, the find object by name doesn't actually work. So with this approach, you can actually find disabled ones, so you'll be able to hide, show them, and then you can also hide them if if they're enabled. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, so last, I think pretty much it. Anyone has any questions? We don't have that much viewers left, but I guess the mornings are a little bit better for everyone. Anyone has any questions? I will do a last announcement for the random draw. So if you want to get a access to, I didn't actually specify a link. So if you want to get access to this package right here, this SPUC package, you can join the server and just write SPUC so that I'll know who is interested and who to randomly select from. So this is the Discord server and the package that. So I'll be looking at after the stream is done, and I'm just gonna randomly select one. So currently there's only 2 people, so 50-50 chance for them to get it. I see a lot of people joined Discord server. That's cool. So, welcome. So, any questions? Anyone has any questions? So, I'm gonna try. So, the idea is to do 3 more videos of like these. This video was kind of about like an introduction to all of the units and going through all of the units that I have. If anyone's trying to get it started or wants to get more information about a specific unit or how it works, that's the idea for this I guess class or this lesson that I have. And in the next one, in the next live stream, so I'm gonna do it on a Saturday, next Saturday, and I'll probably schedule it, or after this stream, I'll schedule it for next Saturday. That one, it's gonna be more of applying these units and showing how you can apply it. So that one should be more interesting, but this one is more informal and has more information about what's going on and stuff like that. So, but there's 9 people right now. Just a quick question: what do you guys prefer better, using Twitch or YouTube for live streams? Actually, because I'm kind of curious how to make third-person controller. So, third-person controller is actually, I think I have multiple versions of it. I'll give you a link to it then. So here's a video for third-person controller. The difference between the third-person controller and first-person controller is the fact that you're using a different camera setup, but pretty much the controls themselves are the same. So it's just a difference in how you configure the. I prefer YouTube. Yes, I guess that is. I think yes, for game development, live streams, I think YouTube is probably better. I was just testing out Twitch and seeing what it has to offer. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So it sounds like no one else is interested in getting the free code, and no one has questions. What's C#? It's a note on the keyboard, like C#. I don't know. Just kidding. Okay, will you touch anything on VR with visual scripting in future? Well, I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing in future, but so I can't really say that I won't touch it, but then I'm not going to promise that I will. But what's exactly the VR interest like? What specific thing that you're interested in VR? Anybody is new here? If anyone is new, let me actually do this. It would be the combination with the controllers. Okay, so yeah, I don't have any a VR set or of any type, so that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I have not done anything with VR, because you kind of need VR equipment to do anything, but maybe one day. I have plenty of projects currently, so let's do this. Whoa, what did I just do? Looking for to the normal projects. Okay, I guess VR is not normal. Is that what you're trying to say? So if anyone is interested in SPUC key drop, go to Discord. And right. There we go. I probably should have done that right away. So if anyone is interested to enter in SPUC key drop, just go to the Discord and write SPUC, so that I'll randomly select one of you guys for that. Yeah, and do it under the Twitch chat. I should probably like do Twitch YouTube chat or something like that instead. Okay, so any more questions? So will you release a game in future? How to make a full 2D top-down game with shooting? With shooting. Will I release? Yes. I mean, of course. I'm always working on projects of my own, and I want to share more information about them, but currently I think I'm not at that stage yet. SPUC. Someone said Spark. That's not what I said, right? I said SPUC. SPUK. Anyone knows what what it stands for? That's Smart Penguins Unit Collection. That's what it stands for. In case you guys not sure what that means.
So that is it. What was I gonna do? Let me actually, well, yeah, let's do this. Let me actually demonstrate the templates. That's one thing that I haven't done. I haven't demonstrated templates. And one more thing. Okay, so there's one more option that I have here that I have not covered in any of the videos as far as I know, and it's the part controller. So I'll create a separate tutorial for that, but the part controller is just a script similar to level loader. So if I drag it right here, so this is the level controller and this is parts controller, and it works similar way. So you can provide a list of parts. Let me go into my side scroller, prefabs, levels. Okay. So inside here, you can specify the parts that you want to use in your level loader, in your controller. In your part controller, and all it does is basically uses these parts to create a level. Now, how you create a level is you can either, like, out of those parts create a sequential, so again combine multiple of them together to exact order that you have them specified in here. You can randomize them, or you can do sequential then random. So if you are trying to create a infinite runner game type, you can actually use this part controller, and that will create an infinite level for you. Or if you are trying to build out random levels using other parts, you can actually use this as well. You'll have to use the sequential option though, so that you have your start. Well, start is not really needed, but you can have your start level and then also a start part, and the most important, you have to have the end part where your finish line is, so you can load the next level and stuff like that. But yes, so this option, I have not made a tutorial on it, so that will be a separate tutorial and how to use that. It's pretty cool. That's what I mean, something similar to what you'd use in BuildBox to do that. Can unban me from the server. Okay, find the live stream, which project you made, download link please. Live stream, which project you made, download link please. So some of our writings, in the live stream, which project you made, download link please. So I'll provide the link to whoever is gonna win the random drop. I'll provide a link to that person. Okay, so Zan, I unbanded you, but please be careful with. Don't do what you want other people to do to you. So don't watch your behaviors. Okay, so that is it. I think we are. Oh no, I was going to show you the templates. Okay, so there are currently, I guess, 5 templates. Well, test is not really a template. It's just infinite loading
Oh, it's actually the test is the one that is using. Did I change anything? Nothing that I want to keep. So the test is actually the one that is using part loader. So if you want to see how the parts work here, you can see that I have level loader, and it uses levels to load it, and then I have level 1, and the level 1 is actually made out of parts, and right here you can have, and you see that I have part start, part 1, part finish. So it's sequential, so I have a list of parts right here, part 1, part 3, part 4, part, I don't know where part 2 went. Okay, but that's the parts. And now if I go and look at level 2, I have part 1, part 5, part 3, part 4. And so it's sequential, and then it's randomized. So this is going to be an infinite level. One more thing. So right here, you can see that I have a level loader, and inside I have a level 1. So if you have level 1 inside here, whenever the game starts, it's actually going to remove this level 1. It's going to clear out the level loader will clear out everything inside it. The reason why I did that is so that when you're working on the level, you don't have to like delete the level to actually oops, okay, I saved it because you don't have to delete the level each time and re-import it. You can, if there's a level that you're working on, you can always just select that level. So drop that level in and do some changes to it, and then work like that. I don't have, so if you use a parts controller, doesn't actually load those parts in here. I was thinking of adding a tool that's gonna do that for you. Okay, so that is the test. And okay, so fall switch is just basically this type of game. So it counts your points, and this one actually has the best score. So best score is 23. That means I actually got all of those points collected. So that's that type of a game. You can look at how that is made. Then Flappy Cube, that is a demo that I was that's actually a tutorial that I was creating. So I did create this one from scratch, well, from scratch using SPUC, and both of the tutorials for it are actually up. So one of them is the level. I use this one for level loader tutorial, and also how to create prototype. That's, I think, what I called it. So if you're interested in step by step how to create this game, it is actually up, so you can actually learn how to make the game with SPUC. So this is the link to it if you want to see the tutorial on that. Very simple game to make, and it's actually pretty good to get started if you're trying to get started. I have not done anything with UI here, so I'll probably add a tutorial about UI, but I don't know. Probably not in this game because it's not really an attractive game. Then Lockstar, this is just a, I don't know, just a simple game that you basically, when you collect that point, you have another point that you need to collect, and then basically you need to, if you won't like, I guess, collect that point, you have to click to collect it. If you don't collect it, then you're gonna lose. So, and you can count the best score. Now my best score, not best score but total score, probably should have used, yeah, so for here, so this one was done before. So in here what I'd want to do is, instead of using this UI points, I would actually switch it to points, and actually don't need that, and use the UI score. UI score, and I want to see the current score points. This is probably what you would like to see. And probably when you, well, you can't really win this game. So now it counts, and if you lose, you restart and start from 0. But when you lose, you'd actually want to see like the best score as well. So what we can do is call this best points, and go here, and instead of displaying current, we can display best. Let's move it down so we can see where the best is, and I probably want to add just the word best. So remove this script. I'm just showing you guys how it works. So best, and for this one, I want to actually pick it up right there. Not really pretty UI, but that's just a quick setup here. I'll just leave it at 100. Okay, so you can either display best at all times. So right now you see that the best is 6. And if I get more than 6, I wasn't able to get more than 6. That's okay, so I got 6, and that was close. I got too excited there. Okay, so as soon as I got more than 7, the best score starts changing. But so you can do that if you want to display the best score at all times. But if you want to display the score only on like restart, you can just move this inside the restart. So by default it's disabled. It's not shown, but whenever you show the restart UI, the best score is going to also appear. So lots of different things that you can do here. So let's actually lose now. So my current was 3 and best is still 10.